You begin with a simple but unsettling inquiry. How do you know that what you call knowledge is unquestionably true? The question appears straightforward, yet it challenges the very structure of thought. Al-Ghazali confronted this issue early in his journey, recognizing that the mind often moves with confidence long before it has inspected its foundation. You rely on reason to evaluate claims, to compare arguments, to draw distinctions. But have you ever examined whether this faculty itself deserves such trust? The assumption that reason guarantees accuracy is rarely questioned because the mind depends on it for every judgment. Al-Ghazali urged the thinker to turn this scrutiny inward. And once you begin, a tension emerges. If reason is the instrument of evaluation, can it evaluate itself without presuming what it seeks to prove? In 11th century Baghdad, Al-Ghazali lived among scholars who dedicated their lives to systematic inquiry. Philosophers debated metaphysics with precision. Theologians refined doctrines using logical methods. Mystics searched for insight beyond argument yet also framed their claims in rational terms. It was an environment where reason held unquestioned authority, even when conclusions diverged sharply. Al-Ghazali mastered these disciplines, yet their contradictions revealed a deeper uncertainty. If reason leads dedicated minds to incompatible certainties, what ensures that rational analysis delivers truth rather than habit? In such a climate, he recognized the need to investigate the very ground upon which thinking stands. Al-Ghazali's turning point began with a careful evaluation of the sources he relied on. You can follow his sequence. The senses often contradict themselves, offering impressions that shift with context. Memory reshapes events, presenting reconstructions as if they were accurate reports. Even intellect, the tool most trusted, constructs arguments on assumptions it has never justified. What once appeared to be firm knowledge becomes conditional. You begin to witness the structure of certainty loosen. For Al-Ghazali, this recognition was not emotional turmoil but a rational conclusion. If each source of knowledge rests on something unexamined, then none can claim absolute reliability. And so the question arises, what remains stable when every ground of certainty begins to yield? As you examine the workings of intellect, the limitation becomes clear. Reason cannot justify itself without invoking its own rules. Al-Ghazali observed that logical inference presupposes the validity of logic, and no argument can escape that circle. When reason attempts to prove its authority, it must use the very principles under question. This does not diminish its usefulness, but it reveals the boundary of its reach. Reason can analyze structures, identify contradictions, and clarify relationships, yet it cannot ground the certainty it depends on. You see that rationality, when completely honest, exposes its own constraints. And with this recognition, a quiet challenge emerges. If reason cannot guarantee truth, what can verify the conclusions that reason produces? Al-Ghazali shifted from the external examination of arguments to the internal conditions that shape understanding. You begin to notice that the clarity of knowledge depends not only on sound reasoning but on the state of the one who reasons. Desire, fear, preference, and subtle attachment can distort perception before any argument is formed. In this sense, the heart, the center of orientation, functions as a mirror. When it is clear, truth appears without distortion. When clouded, reasoning becomes selective and self-protective. Al-Ghazali treated this not as morality but as epistemology. The purification of the heart is necessary for reliable insight. Yet a deeper question emerges. If the self shapes its understanding, how can it purify the very tendencies it cannot fully perceive? Doubt, in Al-Ghazali's method, is not a threat but a discipline. You are invited to notice how questioning loosens assumptions that would otherwise remain hidden. Instead of accepting inherited beliefs or comfortable conclusions, you apply scrutiny to every claim, including those you prefer. This process does not produce despair, it clears space. Al-Ghazali used doubt to distinguish what merely appears true from what must be true. Through sustained inquiry, doubt shifts from a destabilizing force into a tool that reveals the structure of certainty. Yet as this discipline deepens, the doubter is drawn into the inquiry as well. If doubt questions everything, including the one who doubts, what is the standpoint from which certainty can be recognized? After doubt has removed what is unfounded, a different mode of clarity emerges, not as argument but as recognition. Al-Ghazali described this as a transformation rather than a conclusion. You begin to see that some truths do not require demonstration once the mind becomes free of interference. Insight arises quietly, without struggle. This is not irrational, it is the natural outcome of removing distortion. The intellect still functions, but it operates within a broader clarity that it could not produce on its own. You find that certainty is less about proving than about perceiving. Yet a subtle difficulty remains. If insight cannot be fully expressed or justified through argument, how does one share or confirm it? When the mind recognizes its limits, it stops pressing for final proofs. Reason has completed its task. It has clarified, examined, exposed, and refined. What remains is a stillness in which thought no longer claims ownership of truth. Al-Ghazali pointed toward this quiet resolution, where the conflict between reason and what exceeds reason dissolves. You see that awareness continues, yet without the insistence that understanding must be secured through argument. In this silence, truth is neither asserted nor defended. It simply does not need validation. And in that state, a final recognition appears. When the searcher stops demanding certainty, what is left but the clarity that was present from the beginning?